You are listening to From Sobriety to Recovery with Jesse Mogul. Let's get to the show. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the show. It is so great to have you. My name is Jesse Mogul, and I am in addiction recovery. You are listening to From Sobriety to Recovery, and we are at episode 20. I am so happy to be here. This is a fantastic little achievement for me. 5 straight months hitting a podcast every single week. I think I've missed one, and that was a holiday weekend. I think I was away, and I came back, and I just said, you know what, I'll do a great one the next time. So I haven't hit 20 in a row, but I've come pretty gosh darn close, and this is my second foray into podcasting. My first one was called Everything's Interesting with Jesse Mogul. That one did get right around 40 or 50 episodes, but I was definitely not very consecutive with it, so I'm very happy that I was able to do this one for basically 20 in a row, minus one. To be completely honest. What we're going to do now moving forward for the next at least 10, might even do 12 on this. Haven't quite figured that out yet, but I want to discuss the different kinds of ways that I've been handling my sobriety and recovery, and really discussing and diving in deeper into the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects of this. One of the reasons why this has really come to mind to be the topic du jour for the next, couple months is because I was talking with my dad yesterday, and he was a alcohol and drug rehabilitation counselor at a hospital in Dallas for well over 25 years. And he got into doing his work. I'd say, based off what he was telling me, by year 3, he had really decided that that's what he wanted to do, was help other people get into sobriety and recovery and really, be able to kick ass like he was doing. And then by year 5, he started getting certified. And by year 7, he was completely certified. Unlike nowadays where you have to have a master's degree to work in his department, he was grandfathered in, so he didn't need the master's degree. He had life experience and all this other stuff that, was definitely paid dividends greatly in his profession. And so as we were discussing my sobriety yesterday, he was telling me that that there's a system that whether it's a system in place or whether it's a habit that they've seen, that he was saying that in year 1, really the addict takes on a lot of focus on their physical body and getting it back repaired and in shape. Not necessarily like, ripped abs, but in shape compared to whenever he was using. Year 2 is when they start to put attention towards their mental acuity, learning new things, really sharpening the mind, getting out of that haze, that doldrum that they were in during their addiction. And then year 3 was when the emotional work started to come in. And me coming up on month 29, I realized that this really has been a year of figuring out my emotional stuff a lot. And so, because that's what got us into this conversation. So if you are in your first 3 years, be thinking to yourself, where have you followed this trend? Did you put a lot of effort into your physical, then your mental year 2, your emotional year 3? And this was the system that they had in place where he worked, whether that's the model you followed, whether you've done it differently. It's all up, right? It's all up in the air. It's all available to you. There's an infinite ways to take this sobriety and recovery journey, whichever one you're choosing. As long as you're sober and in recovery, then you're winning, right? That's every day is the best day of my life because I wake up sober. And I hope that you take that kind of mentality on as well, that nothing that's going on in life would be any better if we went back to our old ways. Clearly that wasn't working, or we wouldn't have ever decided that we needed to stop, right? And so looking at what I've been going through this year and really trying to figure out what is it that the next episodes and whatnot are going to be about, it was really like, okay, wow, let's discuss exactly where we're all at when it comes to physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. I call these the 4 components of life. And you'll find that they really are, if you can see it the way I do, and that's, everybody sees things their own way. I'm really big into how am I organizing my structure? How am I organizing my recovery? And I wrote a program, a book. It's in the beginning stages of a book. I think it's only at about 50 or 60 pages right now, called Life's Blueprint, where I use the 3 spheres that we all have, career, self, and relationships. Those are the 3 spheres that make up every human's life. I've tried, if you can find other things that you think are other good spheres, I can assure you they fit within my sphere structure and career, self, and relationships. Each one of those spheres is made up of these 4 components: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. With spiritual not necessarily being religious. If you've listened to me before, you know that for me, the spiritual takes on your morals, ethics, values, things of that nature, which can look like religion, because religion teaches a heavy amount of moral ethics and values within its scriptures. Regardless of which one you follow, it gives you keys of how you should live your life so that you can, be going in the right direction, if you will, if that's the best way to put it. And so diving into moving forward, let's really start to harness our energy as a collective unit to look within ourselves and ask, where are we putting forth a good amount of effort on our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual? Because if you organize your sobriety and recovery and really start to prioritize certain aspects of it, what you'll be able to do is really start to figure out where it is that you can prioritize on any given day. And I am really big into being able to prioritize my days, because then I don't feel like I'm just randomly doing things. There's a purpose for why I'm doing stuff the way that, in the order that I'm doing it in, and it helps me move forward knowing that there's structure behind it. Last week I talked with my therapist, and we discussed how no one in this version of my life really knows what an unregulated Jesse Mogul looks like. But anyone who was around in my college years, and there wasn't as many people around towards the latter parts of my drinking days because I had isolated myself so much. But people from Ball State or University of Florida certainly know what an unregulated Jesse Mogul looks like. And nowadays, people only see the very self-regulated version of me. With my schedule blocked out and very structured, and I wouldn't say rigid, but I have a time block. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is when I work out. I have study time for my NLP tucked in, for my life coaching scholars tucked in. I'm writing a book right now, so each day I'm doing 30 minutes to an hour of that, right? And so what I want for all of you is to be able to really start to prioritize what it is you're doing. So through that structure, through that scheduling, through just having an awareness and a mindfulness towards your sobriety and recovery, you'll actually be able to see, oh, I am changing. Like once in a while, you have to just stop and say, okay, let's take a look at what it is I've done over the last month, or what it is I've done over the last 3 or 9, 12, whatever it might be, so that you can really, take stock of inventory. That's a term that they use in refuge recovery. Take inventory of what it is that you've been doing, so that you can make sure that you're moving forward at the right kind of pace. You don't have to speed through this stuff, but you actually want to know that you're hitting certain benchmarks. So when Dad brought up the fact that first year is when, a lot of the people, and again, I didn't know I was going to do this as a podcast, so I didn't ask him to clarify. So I don't know if this is a system that his hospital had in place, or if this is just the tendency for most people who get into sobriety and recovery start to follow. But the idea that year 1's physical, year 2's mental, year 3's emotional. But by no means does this mean that once you're through year 3, you stop working on these. But perhaps by then you've made giant gains in each one of them, and now you can just sort of pay attention to each one as you see fit, or schedule something in each day to cover all 3. We'll dive into that once I start to really unwrap how I feel about that. For now, what I'm hearing myself say is that we know that everyone should have some attention being paid toward physical, emotional, mental, and the spiritual aspects of their sobriety and recovery. In fact, everyone should just be doing this in their lives in general, right? To blindly go through and not be paying attention to any of this stuff, it's like expecting to just blindly read pages out of a book in school and get an A when the test comes up. if you already knew the test was going to be on chapters 7 through 11, then that's the ones you should be studying for. And so let's make sure that we're being mindful of what it is we're working towards so that we can be putting attention exactly on that. So one of the things I want to run through here is I have had this in my show notes for a little while about this is where I was, this is what happened, and this is where I am now. And I feel like maybe I discussed this in the pilot, which is still getting a lot of listens, and I love that. That what I really wanted to have an opportunity here was just do let's go back and let's do a little bit of a review since we're at episode 20 and we're marking into our next 20 episodes. I guess in reality, I could have done this at episode 26 because that would have been exactly halfway through the year. But I've got something special planned for the last 12 episodes of this year, and I want to be able to do this one at 20, another one at 40, and then we're going to do our send-off of the year, really thinking about what it is we're going to do to close the year strong and begin next year just as fast. I have a whole theory on how one year actually sprints into January and the baton's passed off at the beginning of February so that you have that extra month in there to finish off your major stuff from 2019 this year and to get 2020 up into speed. And we're going to really dive into that later on this year, and you're going to love it because last year I got a lot of great feedback on my Facebook Lives that I did about this. And one of the projects I started right at the new year was this podcast. So that topic was already done. So we'll talk more about that later when that comes up. So this is where I was when I decided sobriety and recovery was what I had to get into. Now, the moment alcohol touched my lips, I knew I was going to have to quit it one day. Same, with the drugs, with marijuana, I knew at some point that I would get over that. With cocaine and LSD and ecstasy and ketamine, those are my other big ones. I was not so deluded in my thinking that I believed that I would do that for my entire life. Those were definitely drugs that I knew were taking a substantial amount of my time and energy and certainly my brain, mentality, and just my life. My body really started to be affected by those 4 drugs. Once I moved to Orlando in 1997 until I moved to Gainesville in 2001 to start college, those 4 years were really, really rough on me. I'm really surprised that I made it through that time in my life. So where I was when sobriety showed up into my life on January 13th, 2017, I got always hungover. I was underachieving. I had determination but no motivation, no direction whatsoever. Back in the day, I used to tell people I could always finish a project to 80% completion, but rarely would I be able to get that last 20% in, right? Like the hardest part, the part that's going to pay the most dividends is that last 20%. Society is filled with people who can get to 80%. It's that last 20%. It's the Michael Phelpses out there who swim those extra 20% of laps, who put in that extra 20% of effort. That's how you get the 7 gold medals versus someone like a Ryan Lochte who got himself a couple medals, but also was the dodo head who got busted for being drunk in Brazil and made an ass of himself. And where's he now? And so you look at who are those people that push through the last 80% and get to 100. And it's not too hard to see them. Those are the ones that we call champions, or we call millionaires, or we call business owners. I mean, you've got them in your life that are probably on financially and publicly much less successful. People may not know the successes they have, but and you've seen them do it. And it doesn't mean that they have to be millionaires or gold medal winners. It could just mean that they're amazing parents or amazing children, or they're doing something within their community that really is of act of service. And so that's where I was, the always hungover, the underachieving, the determined but not motivated. This was who I was. And what ended up happening was on August 13th, 2016, in a skydiving accident. No, that was the day I broke my leg playing football. So I did the compound fracturing to my leg skydiving a couple weeks earlier, but didn't realize it wasn't a compound fracture. Let me take that back. It was these little tiny fractures of the tibia and fibula at the knee joint, because I stuck my leg out, so it was extended and semi-locked when I landed during the skydiving. I was training for my Class A certification, and so I felt a bit of a pop, and the knee definitely hurt then. But it didn't hurt so bad that I thought I needed to go to the hospital. And the skydiving place was a few hours outside of Los Angeles. So I just shrugged it off, limped around a little bit. It hurt, but I thought, okay, no big deal. It's just sprained. I'll get over it. And a few weeks later, I was over it enough that I played flag football, and I jumped up for the ball. And when my left leg planted, because it was weakened from the mini fractures, I forget what they call those things, multiple. It wasn't like a huge fracture of the leg. It was like these little tiny. It was like, imagine if you like hit a piece of glass and you watched it splinter. That's what it looked inside my leg at the knee joint. And whenever I landed for that flag football, the leg hyperextended backwards, and that's whenever it completely broke. And that's when I tore my meniscus and my PCL. That left me laying in bed for 3 months, out of work, chewing through my savings and drinking myself into a bloody stupor day after day after day after day. No internal mechanism to shut it off. It was just, can I possibly drink myself out of this sorrow? No one. I didn't reach out to anyone. I just disconnected from the world around me, let the phone ring, let the text messages pile up, and I hid. I hit 220 pounds and really just didn't know how to stop. What was the most important thing that happened was that my sister chose to go into her own alcohol rehabilitation. And she was living in Oklahoma at the time. And so she went to Colorado, and I had some money saved up, so I helped her with some bills and whatnot and got her out there. And she did. It was amazing to see her take that step. She took the step first. It gave me proof that it could be done. She ultimately had to go through a few more relapses before she was able to really submit herself into sobriety. And I'm happy to say that she's well past 18 months now, and I'm extremely proud of you, Leslie. Shout out to you for being where you're at in your sobriety journey. But that was it for me. When I saw her do it, I went out to Colorado. I remember drinking pretty heavily on the nights that I would leave her at the center. And then I'd go back the next day hungover and be listening to all this alcohol education stuff. And there's a couple times that we talked on the phone with her therapist, and I would cry about how I didn't know how to stop myself. And so ultimately, my body started to shut down. I won't go into the gruesome details, but for anybody who's felt their body, seen their body, what it starts to do whenever parts of it start to shut off, and we'll leave it at that. And so I stepped into sobriety and recovery on January 13th. I had my last drink on January 12th, and January 13th I stopped drinking. That was a Friday, and by Monday on the 16th, I went to Kaiser and I checked myself in, and I did the outpatient program. And I'm still a member of Kaiser, and I absolutely love what they've been able to help me accomplish. Shout out to my therapist, Mel Ninte. She has just been amazing. And so where am I now? Here we are coming up on 29 months, and I am a certified life coach, certified business coach, an NLP master practitioner, multiple certifications in various forms of coaching. I do public speaking on positive habit creation through mindfulness and intention setting, lots of motivational, inspirational growth mindset language within my keynote addresses. I'm a podcaster, clearly, as you're listening to me on this show. I also have another one I just launched, College Success Habits, which has been ranking in the top 10 of new and noteworthy ever since it launched. It's absolutely doing fantastic. I'm extremely happy with that. My Instagram account from Sobriety to Recovery is thriving. I have amazing conversations with people within that community that I've fostered. I'm very happy with that. I'm building one for College Success Habits because it's a whole different group of people, and I want to make sure that I get to them and talk to them about the way that they are living their lives and the way that they can start to have more positive habits built around everything they're doing. Because really, the whole idea with going to speaking at colleges and high schools is to turn a back door in on these kids and say, look, the choices you're making now will lead you somewhere. Be in control of where it leads you. Because if you're out of control and you're just doing things without being mindful, without intention, you're going to wake up one day as a 40-year-old drunk, former drug addict who has to get himself into sobriety and pick up the pieces or whatever's left over. Right. And even though I'm reading this book right now called The Naked Roommate to do some research for my book on college success habits, and I think he puts maybe 15 or 20 pages into alcohol and then another 15 or 20 pages into drug use on campus. And he throws a lot of stats out about how 1/3 of students haven't had a drink in the last 30 days, and most students aren't drinking, to excess and all that. And I don't believe it. I don't care who did a study. I think that the people who answer aren't telling the truth, or they're finding the wrong people. And I get that I surrounded myself with drunks in college and people who wanted to party all the time. But at the same time, I know that number is higher. And even if 1/3 really aren't, that's 2/3 that are drinking within the last 30 days. That's 2/3 of the people who probably are drinking to excess at least once a week. And even if there's only 10 or 20% of those that are drinking to super excess every time they, at least once or twice or 3 times a week, or blacking out at least once, or vomiting, or whatever it might be, that's still too many. And I really just want to get out there and just talk to these kids and let them know that even though I'm 42, I still feel like a kid, still certainly have the maturity level of one. And so, think about what it is you're doing and really have some mindfulness towards that. And that's what I want to bring about for the next 10 to 12 episodes of this. And we might go all 20 on this, because really the topics can be so varied within the structure that I'm laying down of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. But it's key for me to know that I'm meeting you where you're at. And because I'm talking to thousands of people, I don't know where you're all at. So I'm just extremely mindful to not get too far ahead of myself in some of these conversations where I start to just assume everyone's where I'm at. And some people at 29, coming up on 29 months, are more, could be ahead of me, could be behind me. This isn't a race. So there's no ahead or behind. There we go. Let's use my words. What there really is we're all on our own journey. But I did make some comments last week about how you're prioritizing and focusing your schedule each day. And I remember having this amazing, amazing turnaround right in the middle of that show, where I was telling you guys that you shouldn't be prioritizing getting up in the morning and taking a shower and going to work or picking your kid up from school, because these are basic things that you should be accomplishing, right? Like my therapist would say, you don't get extra credit for doing what you're supposed to be doing. You don't get extra credit for doing your job. You don't get extra credit for being a good employee. You don't get extra credit for being a good parent because you picked up your kid on time from school. That's the basic stuff that you should be doing. That being said, this is where I had the turnaround during last week's episode, was that I don't know where you're at. And if you're coming down off of an intense amount of years in heroin, meth, alcohol, coke, whatever it might be, just getting out of bed and looking at yourself in the mirror could be your priority for the day. And like I said last week, it's a beautiful thing. Do that. Make that your priority if that's where you're at. So go back and listen to last week's if you'd like more. That's episode 19. But by all means, at the same time, if you are further ahead in your sobriety and recovery, then putting one of your focuses down for the day being to pick your kid up from school, it doesn't get to count anymore. All right, you're not where you were. You are where you're at now. And so that's what we're going to be diving into is, for those of you who might be at day 1 or month 1 or month 3 or 6 and you're still trying to pick up all these pieces, DM me over on Instagram and let me know what's going on, because I'd love to do a show about that aspect of it. Because as I really move forward on this, these next couple months with this physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual layout, if you will, it's going to be the structure of how we put these things together. Everyone's going to be at a different place, and I'm not going to run so far ahead that I leave those newcomers behind, but I'm not going to stay so here at the beginning that those of you who are old timers can't still learn. We're really going to do a great job. I say we're going to do it together because you're going to listen, but I'm going to put a great deal of effort in on my end to make sure that I'm structuring these shows to be effective to everybody, no matter where you're at, because I don't want to alienate anyone ever. That's, although at the same time somebody says if you try to please everyone, you please no one. So there's going to be some give and take on this, and by all means, please DM me over on Instagram. I would love to have a conversation about this to see how it is I can be the most effective to help you. Because I have no doubt whatever you're going through, there's another couple 100,000, and they would love to hear your story, or they would love for me to present your information, your story, so that we can grow together. So that's what we're going to do. I'm really excited about it. And we're doing this again because, I haven't yet to have a guest on, and I'm going to bring my dad on as my first one. I just need to get him comfortable on a microphone. What's going to end up happening is I'm just going to ask him some questions about what he's learned in all this and what his perspective is as someone who was a rehabilitation counselor for almost 3 decades and is now retired and living the life with his wife in a beautiful, beautiful home in Oklahoma. And so, he's gone through the muck and mire that we have. And I didn't live with him as a child. He lived in Texas. I lived in Indiana and Florida with my stepdad and my mom. And I see how I was raised, and that my path led me down the road of addiction. And I see how he raised my brother Eric, who doesn't struggle with the things that I do when it comes to addiction and is really just totally dominating and kicking ass at life. And shout out to my brother Eric for just being even as the older brother that I am by 10 years, I still really admire what he's done, and I look up to his accomplishments, and I really push myself to have similar kinds of life achievements. I don't feel threatened by his success. If anything, I feel like it is just amazing momentum that carries me forward with him. It's like I watched the Indy 500 last weekend for the Memorial Day, and the cars draft each other, right? Like you want that car in front of you to go really, really, really fast, because when you get into its slipstream, it pulls you up to it, and then you can slip by. Then it slingshots you, and now you're going even faster than your car probably was even capable of, because of the speed in which that front car was going. And that's how I see everyone in your circle should be like that. It's the goose at the front, and everyone else gets to draft and use less energy, and then somebody slingshots past, and then now that leading duck gets to be drafted, and it gets to conserve energy, and then it gets to slingshot past. So it's this constant weaving. I'm using my hands here, and I'm weaving them in and out. It's a constant weaving, and you want people who are pushing themselves forward so that they'll help push you forward. And at some point you'll launch past, and then they'll be able to see what you're doing and implement that in their life, and then they'll launch past. And it's very symbiotic, and it's a teammate situation, not a competition situation. And that's the world that we are creating over here at From Sobriety to Recovery. So follow me on Instagram and be a part of that community, because it's really amazing the kind of support I see others giving one another on that platform. It is absolutely spectacular. So we're going to dive deep into this stuff and really come at the heart of what it is that we are battling through. And so, because I'm at the emotional stage right now, it has been amazing to see the kind of issues that I'm working through. And if you want to go back to episode 5 and 10, those were on emotional maturity. And I got some great stuff right there. So you'll be able to catch up on the emotional maturity aspect, which we will, of course, dive into even more moving forward. So that's it for this episode. I'm really excited that we are at 20. Thank you so much if you've been listening. Do keep in mind that everything I say is, of course, my opinion and from my own experiences and my journey. And if you'd like to throw your hat in the ring and discuss what it is you've been going through, again, hit me up over on Instagram. I check through my DMs, not every day, but I certainly do go through them. And just leave me a little message. You can get lost in all of them once in a while, so please be fervent if I don't respond, and just hit me back up again, or leave a comment. I read all the comments on my posts, and at least give it a heart, and sometimes respond back if you directly said something to me. So if you're not getting any love off the DM, then by all means, then say, hey, I'm trying to reach out to you. Would you mind, hitting me up? Do leave that in the comments, and I will see it. I love you all so much. I thank you all so much for being here. I'd love to know where you were, what happened that got you into sobriety and recovery. Where are you now? What are the accomplishments that you're feeling proud of yourself? I have an episode that we're going to do as part of this next few months called Pride versus Proud, and what it is to be prideful versus being proud, and whether it's a sense of accomplishment within yourself or an arrogance. That's going to be a really great one. I can't wait to discuss it. So that's it. Once again, thank you so much, my friends, for joining me here on From Sobriety to Recovery. It is amazing that we have made it to episode 20. I can't wait for the next 32 that will get us through this year. It is awesome. Much love, everyone. As always, be kind to one another. The power of positive energy, release and flow. Take care. Love y'all. Bye-bye.